Hello, and welcome to a wrap-up. This is unfortunately a wrap-up for 2 months because I'm a terrible human being. But we're just going to go into it. There's a lot to get through. I've split it into 3 sections. The first one is just going to be what I read for fun, going to be stacked with fantasy, that kind of thing. Then we've got my uni reading, which is novels that are more literary, looking at different things, whatever. And finally, plays, because I've had a module at uni for plays, so I've had to read a lot. I've read 6 plays in the last 2 months. So we're just going to get straight into it. Off the bat, starting off with an absolutely incredible book. This is Dead House Gates by Stephen Erickson. There are not enough words to describe Dead House Gates. This is, of course, the second book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. Malazan, I understand. I haven't had enough conversations about Malazan to actually ingrain pronouncing it Malazan into my head. I always just revert to Malazan. Hate me as much as you want. This is the second book and is a very indirect successor to the first, should we say. We have a couple of recurring characters in the main plots, and we have references to characters that we are aware of. However, as a spiritual successor, this is a long way from home. This is on a separate continent, following completely new characters. However, it's to do with the Malazan Empire. I was originally going to read this for a video, but then I realised that my uni work was really driving up and that this wasn't going to work for the video I had planned. So instead, that video is still going to exist, but we're going to exchange it and put in the third book. Not going to spoil what that is. Now, there are kind of 3 separate narratives that are happening in this book that all converge and reach a kind of climax together. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it because firstly it's a sequel, and secondly this book is just better experienced going in blind and just letting what's going to happen, because this, as with all Malazan books that I've read so far, which is a grand total of 2, so I don't know why I'm acting like it's a lot, but each one has had a level of leading the reader along, that it is telling you the exact information that you need to know at this point. You'll either understand it or you'll understand it soon enough, and you just need to experience that. Having prior knowledge, I think, detracts from the initial joy of this. That the main thing I enjoy about this book is that feeling of discovery, but this does it in a way where I really felt like my understanding of fantasy was changing as I was reading it. I was appreciating things that I'd never experienced before, or things that I had but done in a different way, a nuanced way that was opening up all new concepts to me. What I will say about all the books I've read, this has probably been the most influential 2 months of reading that has actively impacted on how I view writing and reading and storytelling as a whole. There has been just an abundance of amazing reads. I would 100% recommend Malazan. I understand it's a big old commitment, but once you start, it's really hard to stop. I put Gardens of the Moon down and I was very aware that I wanted to try a lot of different first series, like Wheel of Time, rereading Mistborn. There were things that I wanted to, like the Farseer, create like a basis, a foundation, and decide then which ones I'd come back to. And I knew that Malazan was definitely one that I wanted to, but now that I've hit that second book, Memories of Ice is coming next month. I can't not keep proceeding now. The train is fully in motion. Next is one that I do have a review for, so I'm not going to talk about it too much at all. If you want to hear more, there's the video. It's a full length, boy. How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This is a debut author this year. It's a short story collection, interconnected series of short stories that deal with a plague, who would have thunk it, a plague affecting humanity and how we develop and proceed with that. Now, I did give this 4.5 stars upon first reading it. However, I do think that would creep down to a 4 stars now overall. I think it had great writing. It kept the right amount of emotion, but distanced emotion for me that I enjoy. Maybe it's just a repressed English thing, but I don't like things that are too heavy-handed or too direct to emotion. This has the right amount, which will come in later. This has the right amount of distanced emotion, that I feel it more for some reason, because there is a level of disconnect, that it is keeping some things at arm's length through the prose. It's hard to describe, but it's something that I'm beginning to understand, that it is something I enjoy. This deals with an abundance of themes. This is a theme read. If you're interested in that, you're looking at family, parenthood, childhood, the environment, all kinds of jazz. But I will say that this has actively... I feel like not enough of this has stuck around in my head after finishing it. It's passed along. I feel like this was a transient, I read it, and there it is, it's gone. Stunning book. If you are in America, it's the one time you win of having the best cover. The English one is a vile. I do not like it. So if you can pick up the US edition, well worth it. Next up is also one I have spoken about in the book haul that I did with Grace. When I was in Canada, she got me this for my birthday. It is Recitative. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, by Toni Morrison. An incredible piece of fiction. This is more of a writing exercise, and it's definitely, rather than a book that is trying to convey anything, it's not so much it has a message for the audience, it's that the audience should analyse how they interpret it, and that's the lesson. That this is one for more of an experiment on how the audience interprets. And that this follows two characters, that one of them is white, one of them is black, and they grew up together. They both grew up in an orphanage, and they meet a few times during their life. And it is that during this book, you do not know which one is white, which one is black. It's incredible. It truly is a fantastic piece of writing. This is a short edition, only 40 pages, I think the short story is. Immediately made me buy 2 more Toni Morrison books when I saw them in a charity shop. I plan on reading more of her soon. The introduction by Zadie Smith is fantastic. I cannot recommend this enough. You can also get free copies on the internet. If you just type in the title PDF, it will be there, because it is a short story. This is the first time it's ever been printed by itself. So there are online copies to get as well. If you can get the one with the introduction, it's a great introduction that gives you a lot of context for what you're going to be reading. And reading essays is cool. I don't know who needs to hear that, but reading essays, fantastic. It gives you such an insight and allows you to not only learn new perspectives, but also create your own. Quite often you read other people's perspectives and you start thinking about why you think differently. Everyone should read essays. Next up is one I don't physically have here. I borrowed this from my library, and that was Mouse, the graphic novel following the banning in was it Tennessee, some American state, banned Mouse from libraries because they didn't think it was appropriate for children. Completely baffling decision. I don't know. Mouse is beautiful. Mouse is an incredible piece of literature by Art Spiegelman. It's a story of the Holocaust, which is told from the perspective of art. The difference is that all of the Jewish people are mouses and all of the Nazis are cats. And what we see is Art Spiegelman, in his role, trying to draw the story from his father of his experience during the Holocaust and his mother. And I thought this was going to be a lot more straightforward than it was. When you hear a graphic novel, I don't know, I got this expectation that it was going to be a linear story, that it was going to progress chronologically and be harrowing, of course, but that I didn't expect the level of nuance that we have here. This was astounding. You've got this level of self-awareness and self-inflection, just this heartbreaking look inside Art Spiegelman, his relationship with his father and his mother, these stereotypes that he is worried about perpetuating. Everything about it. It was incredible. I cannot recommend Mouse enough, and everyone should read it. It was unlike anything I've ever read, in a genuine way. That the complementary elements of the art and the writing, the rawness of his vulnerability, of his actual experience writing it, what he chooses to include and not include, the relationship with his father is heartbreaking. And it's that this is a story about the Holocaust, but that this is also a story of a relationship. This is a story of the aftermath, the hurt that moves forward, the wounds that can't heal, that will fester and remain there for the rest of someone's life when they experience something as devastating as that is. Really changing tact here. I don't know, I made a list and evidently I did not think about what was coming after that. Because next up is, I don't have it with me, but Feet of Clay and Jingo by Terry Pratchett. I read those back to back. I'm buddy reading these, all of the City Watch series with Grace. We read them once every 2 months. So next up is Night Watch, I think. No, The Fifth Elephant is up next. Pratchett. There is no need to say anything more about Pratchett than I haven't already said in my other videos. He is funny, thoughtful, he is original, tackling social issues that aren't really addressed in the way that they are during fantasy at the time. We are making social issues ready available to younger audiences, because of course these were handed off to kids because they look like they should be. And so you've got this very clever way of allowing this kind of ideology into the hands of those that will question and take this forward. You're following the same cast of characters. You've got Vimes, you've got Carrot, Angela. I've never pronounced the werewolf's name out loud, so I apologise if I'm wrong. But you've got the reoccurring characters. You get new introductions. Detritus is there. It's just fleshing out these characters in a wonderful way. I preferred Feet of Clay, I have to be honest. I think Jingo scales up. Jingo takes what is a City Watch novel and makes it a way larger issue that I think struggles within what is usually a self-contained story of a City Watch book. So, first three, immaculate. Guards, Men at Arms, Feet of Clay, incredible. Jingo, not as good, but I gave it 4 stars. I mean, it's nothing to sniff at, to say the least. Go to a charity shop. If you're in England, you can go to a charity shop. It's guaranteed that a Terry Pratchett book will just be hidden somewhere. If you ask at the counter if you can't find one, they'll be like, yeah, we keep the door open with a book, and it'll be a Terry Pratchett book. They're everywhere. Next up, we're still in the fun section. This is stuff I just read for me, so we're showing how much there's to come. Next up is Legend by David Gemmell. I read Legend when I was a kid, when I was about 13. Way too young to read this book, but where is it? Who knows? It had an impact, to be sure, but I loved Legend as a kid. Coming back to it, this is a heroic fantasy, and it's based around the idea of that the Drunai Empire is threatened, that this empire has existed for a long time, and that finally this new race, the Nadir, these tribes people that live outside, have been banded together under one flag for the first time, and they are coming to storm Dros Delnok, which is like the barrier that keeps the rest of the world out from the Drunai Empire. And so this basically becomes kind of like a Spartan 300 type situation where you've got 10,000 people behind the wall fighting like 500,000 on the outside of the wall. The best part about this book, by far, is there's great fight scenes. It's heroic fantasy, so you feel a real sense of grandness to it. There's a scale involved that's beyond. You get real hero moments. The warfare in this book, the way they set up the killing grounds in this keep, the way they battle for control of who's going to set up what inside of this keep, digging pits, putting spikes in, everything that you're like setting up the arrow placements, everything you would do during the war at the time is explored here in a great way, and a way that I've never read before, where this is the centerpiece of the book. It reminds me a lot of, I felt like I was reading what Joe Abercrombie actively satirizes in his books. That evidently he does it with a sense of affection, and I feel like Joe Abercrombie must have read a lot of David Gemmell, because there seems like there's some overlaps that really comes into play. A magic system type thing that comes into play that I feel is on a par with each other, where they feel like they're influenced. And the weakest part by far is the love plot. It does not work for me. I don't like the trope that's used per se, unless it's done in a different way. This was very much a of its time love angle in fantasy, which isn't for me. But nevertheless, I did enjoy this book, and I will continue the series because they're nice and short. It's a real nice, short, self-contained book. You can just stop at this one if you really want to, but there is a sense of that I want to keep going. And then we're on our final book of the fun section, which is an audiobook. It was my first audiobook of my entire life. I've never listened to an audiobook all the way through before. And it was Sandman by Neil Gaiman. What a great way to get into audiobooks, because it's a fully cast. First off, Neil Gaiman. So it's weird, irreverent, confusing, spiritual, everything that I like. I love I love Neil Gaiman style spiritual books where gods exist, they're just a matter of fact. There's an interesting concept about what they do, who they are, the place they hold. I love it so much, and this follows Dream, played by James McAvoy in the audio production. It's basically also just a short story collection of him trying to regain artifacts that have been taken from him, and just him meeting people, like DC characters at points, Bible characters, all kinds of wild stuff that shouldn't work, but it does. I can't fully express my thoughts on this because audiobooks are still, for a first experience, I found myself drifting in parts, not because of anything other than I'm walking and then I'm having my own thoughts, or I'm seeing something and I've missed a bit, and I feel like I didn't get a full experience that I do when I sit down and read a book. So I am still very much a preference on physical reading. At this point, I imagine a lot of people, if they haven't already run away, are going to, because we're going to move on to my uni reads. Very, very fun. Very fun. First one, though, may interest people. Magical realism, Frankenstein in Baghdad. Very cool book. It's written by Ahmed Sawadi. It won, where is it? It won the International Prize for Arabic Fiction. I'm doing this for a subject at the moment, a module, and basically this parallels in sort with the original Frankenstein. However, this is set in Baghdad during the war in Iraq, and rather than the traditional sense of Frankenstein being created by a scientist who is looking to create a new race, looking to create a new species, instead we are following a collection of characters, a broad selection of characters, all living and experiencing warfare in Baghdad. And there is a junk trader called Hadi, who he collects, after a bomb goes off, he collects body parts and puts them together. And then the magical realism element comes in, where a woman who has lost her son and is waiting for him to return, that that she refuses to leave her house until her son returns. She bestows life upon this entity, and it comes back as a spirit of vengeance, fueled by the trauma of these two characters and the trauma of the war as a whole, and begins exacting retribution on the people who killed those that make up the body. And when the body kills someone that, well, it's called What's Its Name. When What's Its Name kills someone who murdered a body part, that piece of body falls off, which then creates the interesting commentary on war, that the body cannot fully exact its vengeance as a whole, because the body would fall apart to a point where it can't function anymore. So it has to keep replacing those body parts. And it's that secular nature to violence, that secular need for revenge, that we bomb them to them bomb us to we bomb them, and it goes back and forth, this unceasing, unnecessary violence in the world. And that is by far the most interesting part of the book. This book picks up ideas, runs with them for a bit, puts them down, and picks up something else. And it's very much part and parcel of the book. There's a reasoning for it. There's a textual reason for why this is happening. But it doesn't change that it affects the reading experience, and that it isn't the most enjoyable read. Because you do feel like you've got this idea in your hand, and you're like, this is so good, and then it's moving away. You're like, no, come back, and it's gone, and then suddenly you've got a new idea, and you're like, this is good, but I'd love if we were doing the other one still. Next up is the single most baffling read I've had in living memory. It's brilliant. I don't think I'll ever forget this book, and I think I'll come back to it a lot of times. And that is The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje. What an absolutely incredible book that I wanted to throw through every surface I could imagine. I wanted to burn it. I wanted to throw it out the window. I wanted to stuff it down the author's throat. I wanted to do so much, but at the same time, I love it. This is a baffling book. It follows 4 main characters. We have Hannah, who is a Canadian nurse in Italy at the end of World War II, who is looking after the titular English patient, which is another one of the characters. That he is someone that is burned from head to toe. He is completely scorched, and he is recovering in this hospital in Italy after being brought from Africa. Then we have an Italian spy called Caravaggio, who is like an uncle figure to Hannah, and is there as well. And finally, Kip, who is a Sikh sapper. A sapper is someone who would disengage bombs and that type of thing. The writing in this book is firstly gorgeous, incredible writing. It is told in kind of interconnected chunks, like it'll be paragraphs at a time. Sometimes it will be, you find it difficult to track who you're reading the perspective from, what's happening, what time frame you're in. Things are moving at such a rate and such a strangeness that you have to reread sections to understand fully what's happening. And the way I describe it is, it feels like you're actually meeting strangers for the first time, like meeting a group of strangers, 4 people, and they all know each other, and they're all having conversations, and you're picking up just random snippets of conversation and trying to make a basis, trying to make an understanding of who this person is based on such limited knowledge. And that slowly, as you progress through this book, you start to unravel who these people are, what their experiences are, and it reveals itself, and it is amazing. The character of Kip is such a fantastic character, and for those that are really interested in literature and just analysing techniques of writing, this is a must read for me. It was insane. I love this book and I hate it at the same time. And then the last one for my uni reads, which I wish I had, I don't know where the hell I've put it, but it is one of my favourite reads of this year by far. it is The Long Song. The Long Song by Andrea Levi, I believe, if I remember off the top of my head. An exquisite book. It is set during colonialist Jamaica, where it's set during a specific period, which is the Baptist War, which was where slaves thought they were going to be given emancipation, they were going to be free from slavery. However, that didn't happen, so 60,000 slaves rised up on the island, and there was just conflict. And then following that, we have the ending of slavery and the aftermath of what happens there. And we're following a character called July, who is a child growing up and ends up as a grown woman. And she's an active writer in the book, that they are the narrator telling her story, pretending it isn't her. And it's amazing. One of the most brutal reads I've ever read. It's brutally honest in its depiction of everyone, that rather than just being all white people are bad, which they evidently were, this is all white people are bad. Also, because of the societal setup that has been created, black people were abusing each other, they were manipulating each other, they were vying for preference, they were vying for control. They were indoctrinated into the idea that status is everything, that their race matters, that any drop of white inside of them made them better than the people below them. And it is horrific, brutal, honest, gorgeously told, incredible writing. And the best thing about it is that the most important elements are those bits that isn't written, those bits that aren't put in. Like there's kind of subtle lines that are really just like, they rock you a bit, where for instance, when a white woman first arrives on the island, she's demanding all these different delicacies, and she's like, I want to try everything, I want to try every delicacy they have. And then the brother character kind of turns around and he snaps, and he's like, I've heard that some of them eat the dirt. It's like, would you want to try that delicacy? And it's that, just like, it's rather than, it's like this subtle reference that they know that there's so much starvation on this island. They're starving these slaves to the point where they eat dirt, but they ignore it, and they treat it as if it's like, it's because they're savages, and it's horrific. So if you're in the mindset for that, you have to be in the mindset, but it's wonderfully written, it's wonderfully told, the narrative is ceaseless, it moves so quickly. I read it way faster than I was anticipating, and I would have 100% recommend it. And then finally, all of the damn plays I read. I'm going to try to go through this quickly, because the plays, I feel like not many people have interest. First one I read was Medea, by Euripides. It's an ancient Greek play about the titular Medea, who is the wife of Jason from Jason and the Argonauts, who one day Jason comes home to tell her that he's leaving her because he's marrying the princess of the kingdom they live in, Corinth, the city they live in, Corinth, and that she needs to pack up and leave. And she exacts revenge on him and the people in the way. And the ending of this book is crazy, something that you would not anticipate even nowadays. So I can only imagine the shock and awe that it provided at the time. I thought it was really good, really simple prose. I don't know whether it's just the translation that I read, but I anticipated a denser read. It flowed so quickly, so would recommend that. Second one was Comedy of Errors. This one was a rough one for me. Of course, it's got beautiful rhyming, beautiful prose, incredible like imagery, just the feel to it was there, but the comedy, just, I didn't find it funny, which when it's a comedy, that's kind of rough. It was mostly fat jokes, identity jokes, like misogynist jokes that were evidently funny at the time, but they aren't exactly funny now. So it's once again an appreciative read rather than a read that I would enjoy. I don't think I'd ever read Comedy of Errors again. A Doll's House by Heinrich Ibsen is amazing though. It follows, forgot her name, follows the titular character, and that she is a young wife who set in Scandinavia, where women could not have education or the right to their own money and anything at all. They were very much stay at home, as it were, and this follows her where her husband almost died before this play takes place, and she had to sign a contract. She had to put herself into debt for him to keep him alive, but she's never told him that, and we have her as she tries to pay off that debt, and it's this really intricate and realistic play. It was part of the realist movement. It is it's very good. It really is. It has the most famous door slam at the end of the play that I could think of, and it was wonderful. A fantastic read. Then we've got Mother Courage and Her Children, which is by Brecht, a writer who was very much the antithesis of Ibsen, that they believed in the kind of unreality, the unnatural, highlighting that to show the message that it's trying to proceed, and it wanted you to leave wanting to make change, that it was active in wanting the audience to leave in rage, to, rather than say an ancient Greek drama where you've got catharsis, where it's the removal of those emotions, this wanted to stoke them in you and make you leave with that feeling of like, this is messed up, like I need to change this. It's set during the 30 Years' War between the Catholics and Protestants, and we follow Mother Courage with her children, where she is travelling, selling stuff to soldiers. She changes sides. It's all about the game to her. It's all about making money, and it's her slowly losing her children as she goes along. And the most poignant line I can think inside of the play is where she's talking about the sergeant is trying to pull her son away and take him, and she's like, no, you like, this war will not have him. And he's basically like, if you want to profit from the war, you have to feed it. And it's such a, I think that's like, if you were going to summate the play in one line, that would be it. It's just, if you're going to profit from the war, you have to feed it. Next up, last two. We're almost there, everyone. Last two, The Crucible. The Crucible is by Arthur Miller. It is set during the Salem witch trials, and it's about McCarthyism really, but it's set during the witch trials, and it is fantastic. This is one of my favourite plays I've ever read. It, once again, non-stop. It is brutal. The interactions, the writing is fantastic. The relationships explored. There are heartbreaking moments. Once again, you've got the idea of that all of these women are saying that there's magic. They are saying they're being possessed because they are being threatened. That they either admit to being witches or being possessed, or they're hung. And so they are actively creating lies. They are playing up to the role that is being forced on them by the society, and it's this hysteria, this gentle feeling of rising hysteria until it's a crescendo. There's no stopping it, and it's also wonderfully told. All of these are so short. I would recommend this one as well. And finally, what a one to end on, because this was mental. Cloud 9 by Carol Churchill is the horniest play I've ever read. A wonderful setup. I loved the first half of this play. Second half lost me because there's a time jump involved and I was not invested. The first half was fantastic, really cleverly told. Such as it's set in Africa, once again during colonialist periods, and we are following the main character. We're following Clive, who his wife Betty is played by a man, and she describes how everything her husband wants her to be, she is. So it's this interesting, everything's to do with gender and sex and identity in this. He introduces Edward, his son, who is played by a woman, and it's that everything that his father wants him to be, he struggles to be. So it's that he's effeminate. He identifies more with his mother, and finds it difficult to be the manly man, the son of a great man that he feels like his father wants him to be. We have Joshua, who is a black servant who is played by a white man, and he describes himself as everything that white people want me to be, I am. So it's this really interesting conversation around identity and the role of the British as well. And women don't even get an introduction. They are just, what's the direct line here? It's, he presents the women, and it's no need for any speeches by the rest, my daughter, mother-in-law, and governess. And, yeah, insane. If you want to read one of the most insane things you've ever read in your entire life, give this a go. I can't say you probably won't enjoy it, but it'd be a hell of an experience. And so, that's 2 months done. I've now finished reading for university. I can read what I want. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do like and subscribe. I plan on making regular content-ish again. I am hoping to, at the very least. I appreciate everyone that's stuck around during the time where I have had uni and have just not quite had the right motivation to do it. But here I am. We're back. We're going to try. I love you all. Have a nice rest of your day.